Selling anything online is really challenging. And then you go and add a live launch to the whole mix, and you find yourself feeling completely overwhelmed and starting to worry about how things are going to go. And that's why today we're talking about how to cultivate a positive launch mindset. And I'm going to go through a few of those tips and tricks today on how to make sure that you are thinking about it the right way from the get-go. When you're live launching, you're not only worried about sales, but there's way extra pressure with an audience there with you along the way. It can be really, really stressful. And that is why developing the mindset of an entrepreneur is essential in order to do this very well. I call it entrepreneurial mindset because an entrepreneur understands what it is really like to run a business, to try to sell things, to sometimes have them not sell very well. There's just so many realities that are not the super success stories that we hear about in the news, in the media, and just among friends. We know that there's so much else that goes on behind the scenes, like years and years it takes to perfect something in order for it to actually finally do well and get recognized. There's so many of these things that we face as entrepreneurs, and that's why an entrepreneurial mindset is all about knowing that this is really what goes on and never expecting the super success stories, because most of them are actually not true. So I want to help you develop a six-figure mindset. And that is also just about being able to show up at your best with all the right expectations so that you can put your best foot forward when you are doing a launch. And I'm going to share with you those tips right now. So number one is all about setting realistic goals. I know what it's like to go into a launch thinking, what if I get like 20 people who buy or 30 people who buy, or I've had these crazy expectations and I don't know where they came from. I think it was because I was just sort of hoping that I would sell that many things because I was so excited about the product that I was putting out there, the course, the program, you name it. It seemed like a no-brainer to me. And I wanted to work with that many people. Because I had the capacity for it, I thought that, oh, this could be possible. Well, I was really, really wrong. It took me until a few years ago to really start to look at what actual conversion numbers are. And they are much lower than we think. We are not going to get every single person who comes to an event to buy from us. We're not going to get 50% to buy from us. We're going to get a much, much smaller number than that. And if you don't know that from the get-go, then you might actually think that it's possible that you can get a ton more sales than is even possible. Because the truth of the matter is, if they don't even show up to the live event, they're not going to consider buying from you. And if you only have, say, 100 people who signed up to an event, you might only get 25 or 30, if you're doing well, who shows up. And then out of that number of people, there's only going to be a few that buy, because 10% of 30 is 3, right? So instead of thinking, wow, I've got 100 people signed up, I might get 30 sales, you'd be doing well if you've got 3 sales. So that puts it in a different perspective that allows us to go in to our launch with realistic expectations. And that prevents us from feeling really, really deflated when we don't get the numbers. And when we do that, it's hard to go and show up and do it again in a few months, right? We don't want to rely on having these super excited moments or highs that are going to make us think that we're going to just knock it out of the park randomly or suddenly. That's just not a great high-low cycle to be in our business. And we'll end up having that high optimistic attitude is going to crash. And then we're going to end up feeling crappy. And that cycle of up and down roller coaster emotions does not need to be enhanced any more than it is. We need to get that in check. And that is part of having that entrepreneurial mindset, that six-figure mindset. It's that knowing that it's not going to be a miracle and it might not be a disaster. And then we can just start moving along with a lot more productivity, a lot more intention, and really being able to map out, well, how are we going to get to our goals? This is what's going to have to go into it. And that makes a huge, huge difference. Once you do that once or twice, you'll start to develop benchmarks, and it makes it much easier to plan. So then you'll prevent that roller coaster unless something really goes wrong or something has really changed. It'll prevent that from happening in the first place. Secondly, you want to do your work in advance. It's so important to really properly plan for your launch. If you leave it to too last minute, it ends up being a cram. And it's not about doing it scrappy, because I totally believe in doing it scrappy. If you don't have a giant team, you're still potentially the one that's doing most of the bulk of the work to get ready. But still, you want to give yourself time, because you don't want to be staying up all night and putting yourself in a bit of a panic to get the stuff done. Give yourself longer than you think. There was a period where I was launching all the time, and I did it because I really, really wanted to get my stuff out there. I wanted to make more sales, get more members in and more people in my program, but I ended up getting really tired and I wasn't doing a good enough job. And I have learned to space it out a little bit more, which does feel kind of risky in a way, because some people like me who are action takers feel uncomfortable doing things slowly and doing things patiently. And that has taken a bit of a change in mindset for me to recognize that rushing to something doesn't necessarily make it work out better than if you take your time to plan it out. So that's why leading up to my launch event, like my 6-figure membership secret training that I'm doing this Thursday, actually tomorrow, which you can sign up for at scalingdeep.com/live. It's going to be amazing. I spent a lot of time getting some of the things out in advance done, like my Facebook ads. I had them prepared in advance. I went through old ads and decided to reuse some of them and then created a few new ones. And that was weeks and weeks before I had them even start. I also have my training presentation, which I've had for ages, and I actually have updated it quite a bit. But I still had the baseline of having that first one, which takes a lot of time to create. So I still left myself few weeks to update that presentation and practice it so that I feel comfortable going into it and actually being there live with people, because that's not the time when you want to start looking at the content in your webinar and not being sure what you're saying and then being like, oh, what did I mean by that? Like, you want to know your stuff in advance. So give yourself more time to do it. And then you can plan it out more in advance, and then you can continue to work on it to improve over time based on the last time. So that's another critical thing too. Again, I'm all for doing things scrappy. I don't think that everything has to be perfect, but you definitely don't want to feel like you're rushed and start panicking. That's not fun. That adrenaline will wear off. And no matter what your result is for your event, you're going to feel disappointed because you're going to be coming off that adrenaline, and that never feels great. Be okay with marginal results. And this is what I talked about earlier. And then having these too high expectations, it's actually okay if you convert at 5%. That's pretty damn good for the market right now. It's actually okay that if you're at 4%, it's actually okay. You're doing really well if you're at 10%. So I would set yourself some actual real expectations based on the amount of people who are actually going to show up and even see your sales page. If you're okay being in kind of the margins of like, yeah, I did okay, it wasn't amazing, but it was okay, then you will feel great about improving upon it and doing it again. And that's what I really want you to do. I want you to believe in your value proposition. I want you to believe in your program. I want you to believe that you really help people. And you've got to hold on to that and not let your launch results stress you out. So if you are making any sales in your launch, it means you're resonating with people. It means you've got something that's good for people, that they want, that they're excited about. And you just have to work on making it more obvious to more people who perhaps think a little bit differently, who perhaps sit on the fence a little longer and are just unsure. You can create ways to make those connections with people, and you can take your time to do it. Next, sometimes we just fail with an untested product or program. It happened to me this year, and it happens to large businesses too. Sometimes we are so excited about a program or product that maybe costs way less than we're normally selling or way more than we're normally selling, and we still think it's the best deal in the world, and we're so thrilled to put it out there to our audience, and then barely anyone buys. That happens to the best of them. It is common. People do it all the time. Every time you put something out untested, you don't know what's hitting the mark or missing the mark. And that really comes down to all the different variables that go into a product, such as what is the value proposition? Have you changed that? What is the price level? How different is that than the audience has come to expect from you? What if they're newer to something and they don't want to spend the amount? Or what if they're really been working on things for a while and they don't want to spend too little? They're looking for higher support. You don't really know what all of that is. And that's why if you have all these different variables, how you sell it, which is what we're talking about with live launching, what you're selling, what you're pricing it at, how you're positioning it, who it's for, what your whole sales page and emails look like, what's the arguments you're making towards buying it. All those things are brand new and untested, and it could just not work. And you need to be okay with that. It doesn't mean you have to throw that whole thing out. It just means that you have to start to get objective and figure out what about it didn't work, and is there a different way you can sell it or to a warmer crowd so that you can properly test out this concept and see if there's anything people really want from you long term. It happens all the time. And this is why I always say you're better off selling something that you've been selling for a while, that you know you can sell, that you know is a great program or product that does serve your audience really well. And then you can put something out new and different, but just try not to do it at a time where you're doing it instead of the thing that you know is tried, tested, and true, because that is going to be hard to stomach. All right, 2 more tips. I think I've said this one already. Repeat, repeat, repeat. This really dovetails nicely with the last thing I told you, is that you are better off repeating what you've been doing at least a few times a year. You don't want to be live launching new things all the time that are really untested unless you have a strategy of bringing out new things to your audience all the time and reselling to the same audience over and over again. You do want to get more practice selling the similar things over and over again, so that you get better at selling them, you get better known for the outcome. You can make certain tweaks, but I think repeating is really the key to success in business. It's getting into that repetition phase is when your life actually frees up a little bit, because creating a new content from scratch, whether it's in a program or in a launch event or in all of your emails or your sales pages and all of that stuff that goes into selling something, is a lot of work. It takes hours, days, weeks to create new things, new presentations, new programs. It's a lot. So you want to really focus on repeating most of the parts of everything you've done before with just these small changes at a time. And then finally, practice, practice, practice. Live launching is intimidating. I know I get nervous every single time because a lot goes into a short period, whether it's a challenge or a webinar or a workshop. You really do feel like you're showing up and you are performing to some extent. You want to be enthusiastic. You want to be in a really good headspace. And that's why I really want you to work on this entrepreneurial 6-figure mindset, because I want you to go in ready to shine, ready to feel comfortable with your material, ready to handle any little blip that might come up while you're doing it. You've got to go in with confidence. Confidence is key. And I don't really mean fake confidence, although having a bit of fake confidence does definitely help and gets you there, but also just with the peace of mind of knowing that you've got realistic expectations, knowing that you've done something before or tried something before, or you've done something similar. Maybe you've done it with a warm audience. Also knowing that the program you have, you've been able to sell already, even if it's just to a warm audience casually. Just all these things will help you feel more comfortable when you are in front of a live audience. And there's nothing better than practicing it at least a few times. Like literally go through your presentation, turn on the recording and pretend you're in front of a live audience. Do those practice runs, because you're going to get better and better at it. You're going to have less variables every time you do it. So if you're doing it every few months, you're going to be so much better at it in a year than you will be for the first couple times, because new little things will come up. You get better at the material, you get better at the nuances, and you'll just feel more comfortable in front of a live audience using the technology that you're using. So all these things put together are so important. They make such a difference. And then the last major thing that makes the biggest difference in the world is getting a good coach or mentor who can actually help you make improvements. If your live trainings or your live events or launches do not go well, then you can have somebody to run it by, and perhaps they can give you some feedback on it that is like a pretty big critical piece that you were missing, that if you change would make a massive difference in your next launch. Or it could be a minor thing. Let's say you did okay, but you don't even know what was missing because it's such a micro detail that your coach or mentor or business strategist can see, like, hey, like you didn't do this piece as well. You didn't have a deadline. You didn't create urgency. You gave too much content away and no one needed to buy anything afterwards. It was too satisfying. Those kinds of things really do make a difference. And so having an expert coach or mentor will help you optimize something that's marginal, and it'll help you massively improve something that didn't go that well. It makes a big difference having someone else's eyeballs on your brand, also somebody who's been through many themselves and coached and mentored a lot of other people through the same things. That's when you know you're getting objective feedback and you're going to get an excellent analysis that's really, really going to help you validate what you might already know about what you need to work on. Okay. I have something special in store for you tomorrow. So make sure you go over to scalingdeep.com/live and sign up for my free 6-figure membership training. It's totally free, but you do have to sign up to get access. Don't forget that perseverance is your very best friend. So embrace that CEO mindset that you have in you, and you'll be excited to launch every single time. Thanks for being here, and bye for now.